Let's go back to 2011, back when MLB just had one season and we were months away from season 2, but in the meantime, I was either watching YouTube videos,
Like colors, Daddy says Derpy is a Pegasus pony, which is awesome. Someday Daddy says he'll teach Derpy how to fly.
or playing games in Newgrounds. Until one night I found a game called Story of the Blanks, and this game absolutely horrified me back in the day, and today I want to celebrate the 13th anniversary of this iconic piece of MLP history. Let's begin with this story. Story of the Blanks was created by Donitz, and it was created for a contest for Equestria Gaming back in 2011. Story of the Blanks wasn't based on a creepypasta at the time, rather Donitz created the story of the game and it was later made into a fanfic. Something that was pretty unique at the time was the graphics. Now I know that it doesn't look so impressive nowadays, but at the time we didn't have something like it, and not only this game but all Donitz games had a pretty unique style that made them iconic. But what's the game about? Well, we begin with Apple Bloom walking through the town where she finds Twilight. Twilight telling her that she's going to leave some books with Sakura, so Apple Bloom decides to tag along. And when they get to Sakura's place, she thanks them for the books, but she warns them to get back to Ponyville, saying that you don't want to remain for the events that will unfold, and that for the darkness this night you cannot trust. Okay. And after that weird warning, Twilight and Apple Bloom decide to go back, but a bunch of trees is blocking the way, so Twilight begins to clear a path. Twilight telling Apple Bloom to stay right there until she clears a path, but Apple Bloom doesn't listen. And she begins to look around, but while she's looking, Apple Bloom sees a grey pony, and she decides to follow her into the forest. So, Apple Bloom, I know that you weren't the brightest at this time, but come on, really? Really? So, okay, after walking around in the empty, creepy forest, she finds a little town called Sunnytown, where everyone is super happy. But something seems off, all the ponies don't have their cutie marks. And Apple Bloom being, well, Apple Bloom, she begins to ask the ponies of the town why they don't have their cutie marks. The ponies of the town telling her that they don't know what she's talking about. Where we don't see nothing out of the ordinary until we meet a pony named Mira, who is crying over the death of her friend, and Apple Bloom just keeps exploring the town. Again, Apple Bloom. Why? And at one point, Apple Bloom finds a house in the middle of the forest. And when she enters, we see that the house is really dark, almost like it's been abandoned for years, and in the middle, a chimney. So Apple Bloom decides to light it, and we see those are the remains of a pony. Apple Bloom, after seeing this, she runs scared out of the house, but when she gets back to Sunnytown, we see that it's abandoned, but the most horrifying thing is the zombie ponies. Really, I'm not gonna lie, I always thought that these things were shadow ponies, but okay. Where the ponies that we saw and talked in the game are now the enemies, telling Apple Bloom that she was going to spoil the party or telling her to stay. And after hearing that, Apple Bloom runs away, and after moving a rock, we meet with Mira, where she tells Apple Bloom to run away, and is here where we pass through the forest, now full of skeletons, and at the end, Apple Bloom finds Ruby. And is here where Ruby apologizes to Apple Bloom for putting her in danger, but out of nowhere, skeleton ponies emerge from the ground and they're headed for Apple Bloom and Ruby, but a strange white light comes and flashes a big light in the air. The next thing that we see is Apple Bloom safe and sound in the Everfree Forest, Twilight finding Apple Bloom and thinking she's okay, and finally going home. And that's basically the story of the game. Overall, it's a simple story, but pretty effective. I know that is not the scariest thing nowadays, but the game does a pretty good job to unsettle you, and that goes even to the music, which even nowadays I don't feel comfortable hearing it. There's just something off. And Story of the Blanks was later adapted into a full fanfic and even a comic. And of course, even the show referenced Story of the Blanks directly in 2 episodes, one being the cutie map, where the reference comes from Starlight's Village, and the second one, well, I think that a lot of people are going to say this is a stretch, but I do consider that the episode Bloom and Gloom has a reference to Story of the Blanks, and that's this part. I don't know why, but even when the episode came out, I felt like this was a reference to Ruby, but let me know what you guys think. But we still have one more thing to talk about, and that is... Yeah, believe it or not, there are more games of Story of the Blanks, but today I just want to mention 3. Why? Well, because they're important in their own way. So let's begin with... First we have Story of the Blanks 3D, and this game is in here because it's important in the sense that it was one of the first times that this game was in 3D. But outside of that, there's not a lot to say about this game. It's literally the 2D game in 3D, with the only real difference is that this game has voice acting. But then we move on to... And now we have Story of the Blanks 3D, the second version. Now this is the version you might have seen videos of, and this version was made by a YouTuber called La República de Lyra. And basically he made this game as a response to the other one. He wanted to make it better, bigger, and more accessible to Latin American fans. So he started development on 2021, and he thought that this was going to be a short project, maybe 2 months. But that wasn't the case, and he finished a year later, and a lot of this information comes from the video he made about the development on his channel, where he shows a lot of behind the scenes of the project. And the most interesting thing is that the most difficult part, as he mentions, is the modeling of Sakura and the hut of Sakura. But overall, I think this game is pretty important, not only to the MLP community as a whole, but to the Latin American part of the community. And we move on to... And our final project is Story of the Blanks A Lost Tale, and this is a version that hasn't been released and that will probably never be, which is pretty sad because the idea of this version was really interesting. Basically, it was going to be a retelling of the Story of the Blanks story with some new story elements in the style of the game Limbo, where basically the only thing that would have changed was the name of the characters. For example, Twilight was going to be Evening Star, Sakura was going to be Dayo, and Apple Bloom was going to be called Blossom Bloom. But in the end it was cancelled by its creator. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. The creator lacked funding and motivation to finish the game. Not only that, but he also mentions that in the future he would probably finish the game. Now this was posted on 2016 and we haven't had any information since that. The last thing in this post is that this leaves a void in his chest, and eventually he was going to wake up and consider to get a job, a real job. And that's how Story of the Blanks A Lost Tale ended. Overall, it might not be the best or even the scariest thing now, but I can't deny that this is an iconic piece of the MLP community, and I do believe that it's still worth playing or watching the game now, or to at least read the story, because at the end of the day, the last thing that we have is the memories. But what do you guys think? Did you play Story of the Blanks back in the day, and what's your opinion about it? Leave it down in the comments. And remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing for more videos like this. And remember, take care guys, I'll see you in the next video.